Haunted Woman and Pringles. The neon lights flickered in the chilly night air as I drove into the convenience store parking lot. A long week of exams had passed, and I needed a quick snack to refuel. The small town was quiet, with only the occasional car passing by. As I walked through the automatic sliding doors, I grabbed a shopping cart, my mind focused on the essentials: instant noodles, an energy drink, and some gum. I turned into the chip aisle, scanning the shelves for my favorite Pringles, but then I saw her. She stood there in a tattered old dress, her hair unkempt. The young woman looked disheveled, her wide eyes darting back and forth as if she were losing her mind. I felt an uneasy energy radiating from her as she mumbled a strange mantra, repeating,
"Must buy Pringles, must buy Pringles."
Her voice wavered erratically. She danced around the aisle, her body swaying erratically as she sang a nonsensical tune. I watched in horror as she kicked over a snack display, sending boxes and bags tumbling to the floor. Her laughter filled the air, a cacophony of manic joy mixed with despair. It was as if madness had completely taken over. Cautiously, I reached for a can of Pringles, hoping that showing I meant no threat would help calm her down. In that moment, as my fingers brushed against the can, she stopped, staring directly at me. There was a dangerous glint in her eyes.
"You want some too, don't you?"
My heart raced as I instinctively took a step back. Then, without warning, she lunged at me, her hands clawing at my face. I staggered back, the can of Pringles slipping from my grip and rolling away. Her scream pierced the air, a sound more animalistic than human, as she clawed at my cheek, drawing blood. I froze in fear, screaming for her to stay away from me. I clung to a nearby shelf, but she showed no mercy. I yelled, trying to shove her away, but she was stronger than she looked. In her rage, she grabbed a bag of chips and swung it at my head. The bag burst open, chips flying everywhere. She relentlessly attacked, snatching another bag and then another, pummeling me with each one. I felt utterly disoriented, desperate to find a way to escape. The aisle was deserted, with no one around to help. In despair, I spotted a metal can on the shelf and swung it at her hand. She screamed in pain, but didn't back down. Instead, she picked up a loose metal stand and swung it at me. I felt a sharp pain in my arm as blood dripped down my skin. I screamed, panic coursing through me. "Help! Someone help me!" I backed against the shelf, searching for anything I could use to defend myself. My hand found a can of soup, and I threw it at her. The metal soup can hit her square in the face, causing her to stagger and fall backward. I stumbled away, my vision blurring as blood dripped from my face and arms. I could hear her behind me, her uneven footsteps and her voice still screaming, "Must buy some Pringles." As I turned a corner, nearly slipping on the tile floor, I saw the store security guard rushing toward us. His face was a mix of confusion and determination as he grabbed a can of pepper spray and tackled her down just as the crazed woman was about to reach me, pinning her to the floor. She seemed to go limp under the man's grip, starting to scream and thrash wildly. 2 store employees rushed in to help, restraining her as she continued to struggle and scream. I slumped against a shelf, gasping and trembling, my body aching as I felt the warm blood trickling down my face. When the paramedics arrived, I saw them take her away, still shouting that phrase as shoppers gathered, their faces wide with shock and concern. I could hear the whispers around me, speculating about who she was and why she attacked me. The next morning, news of the incident spread everywhere. I learned that the strange woman had been identified as a local addict with a history of mental illness. Apparently, she had been off her meds and hadn't eaten in 3 days. Her obsession with Pringles led her to break into the store. I shuddered at the memory of the madness in her eyes. As the holiday season approached, I couldn't shake the memories of that night. Every time I passed the convenience store, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was a haunting reminder of how quickly things could spiral out of control. One afternoon, while sitting on a park bench, I overheard a group of teenagers talking about her. They laughed, telling wild tales of how she climbed onto the store roof and started screaming, bringing back those terrifying memories. That night, I lay in bed, the incident replaying in my mind like a horror movie, the woman's face haunting my thoughts. I tried to shake it off. Days turned into weeks, and while I tried to move on, I passed the convenience store one evening, compelled to look at it. The familiar neon lights flickered, and for a moment, I hesitated. As I stood outside, the sliding door opened. I stepped inside, my heart pounding, hoping to face my fears. I continued shopping in the store when a figure caught my eye. Slowly approaching from behind a shelf, it grew larger and came closer. Suddenly, as it peeked out, I was startled and fell back. A boy stood right behind the shelf holding a can of Pringles, grinning widely. I froze, my heart racing. The image of that woman flashed through my mind, and I felt panic rising once again. The days passed and the memories began to fade, but every time I passed that store, the uneasiness returned, a chill running down my spine. The madman on the highway. This particular memory has haunted her with anxiety and panic for years. She was a single mother, working as an Amazon delivery driver to make ends meet. Lucy would drive to various delivery locations, and one time she was on the highway near midnight. The sky was overcast, thunder rumbled around her, but the rain had yet to begin. The low fuel light flickered as a warning. The highway stretched ahead, desolate, surrounded by dense, dark forests. Lucy checked the map and saw a gas station 15 minutes away. She decided to take her chances, skipping a crowded one of the biggest mistakes she ever made. Following the GPS directions, she turned onto a dusty road surrounded by thick woods. The road was so uneven that speeding up was nearly impossible. Then, Lucy saw him. A man stood by the roadside, dressed in tattered clothes. His scarred, filthy skin glowed under the dim light as he stared at her. Thinking he might need help, she made her second mistake. She stopped the car, just a few feet away from the man. She rolled the window down slightly and leaned out.
Are you okay, sir?
The man didn't respond, but growled instead. His voice was strange, unlike anything she had ever heard. It was a broken, animalistic howl. Lucy stepped out of the car. That was her third mistake. As soon as she exited the car, the man took a few steps forward and then stopped. Lucy asked again if he needed help, but this time, something changed. The man crouched down like a predator about to pounce. Then, grinning wickedly, he got on all fours and started crawling toward her. Before Lucy could comprehend what the hell was happening, she bolted for her car. The man began crawling at her, faster than she thought possible. He kept crawling toward her, his sinister grin stretching wider. His unblinking eyes locked onto her. Panic surged through Lucy. She could hear his shrill laughter behind her. But before he reached her, she slammed the car door shut, locked it, and fumbled with trembling hands to start the engine. The condition of the road was terrible. Lucy didn't notice the large ditch on the right. Her car suddenly sped up. The right wheel slipped into the ditch, causing a violent jolt, trapping her vehicle. Beads of sweat formed on her forehead as she looked at the dusty road ahead, surrounded by the deep forest. The only way out now was to step out of the car. The hood of the car suddenly sank. Then, he jumped onto Lucy's hood, pressing his terrifying face against the windshield, grinning savagely. Lucy gagged. The sight was too much to bear. The man laughed, his mouth wide open, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. He whispered through the glass, his voice echoing in the air.
I'd love to torture you until you vomit blood.
Lucy's trembling fingers fumbled for her phone, dialing 911. Her voice quivered as she spoke to the dispatcher, pleading for help. She knew it would take at least 10 to 15 minutes for the police to arrive. As Lucy hung up, the man started climbing down from the hood. She checked all the doors, relieved that they were locked. He reached her window and tried to open the door. Then, he turned around and began searching for something on the ground. After a few minutes, he stopped and picked up a large rock. He hurled it at the window. The glass cracked under the impact, but did not shatter. Lucy screamed, gripping the steering wheel tightly.
Stop! Please! What did I do to you?
He just smiled, his eyes wide and wild, raising the rock again. Then, a loud sound car horns blaring, sharp and deafening. Bright headlights illuminated the crazed man. He froze, his expression turning blank, and slowly lowered the rock. The man locked eyes with Lucy one last time. He leaned closer to the window.
Looks like today is your lucky day. If you ever pass through here again, don't forget to pick me up.
He turned around and ran, disappearing into the forest. The truck pulled up beside Lucy's car, and the driver jumped out to help. The world blurred, then everything faded to black. Lucy had passed out in her car. That day, the police told Lucy they had found several abandoned vehicles left on the road by their missing owners. They had also received reports of 3 missing persons. They said they couldn't find anyone matching Lucy's description of the terrifying man. She didn't know where he was now, but for all delivery drivers and night travelers, the warning was clear: never stop for suspicious strangers, especially when driving alone in a desolate area. The Curse of the Red Shirt Girl. Arthur was driving home from a friend's birthday party on a quiet night. The streets were empty. The only sound was the wind whistling through the deserted roads. As he drove, he noticed a young girl standing alone by the roadside. She had blonde hair, blue eyes, and wore a striking red coat over a white dress. To him, she looked beautiful, but as his car approached, she raised her hand, signaling for a ride. Arthur slowly pulled over and rolled down his window as she approached the car. The girl asked Arthur,
Sir, if you don't mind, may I have a ride?
He didn't think much of it and immediately agreed. She sat in the back seat. Feeling a little nervous, Arthur hesitantly asked her where she lived. She didn't say a word but handed him a small note. The address was written in faded ink, as if scribbled down years ago.
All right, what's your name?
Her lips barely moved as she whispered.
Mary Tellish.
A strange feeling crept over him. Something about her name seemed familiar, like a whisper from the past. Her expression never changed. He tried to ease the tension by asking about her interests. Her voice was flat.
I used to play with dolls when I was little, but I can't play with them anymore.
She smiled gently, but not in a normal way. It was unsettling, filled with sorrow.
They took them away from me.
Something about the way she spoke sent chills down Arthur's spine. They were nearing an old cemetery, its rusted iron gates glowing under the moonlight. Suddenly, Mary leaned forward. Mary asked him to stop at the cemetery gate. She placed her icy hand on his shoulder.
Please, take my coat and return it to my home as soon as possible.
For a brief moment, he swore her fingers didn't actually touch him. It was a strange, ghostly sensation. Before he could respond, she darted out of the car, heading toward the cemetery gates, leaving her red coat behind. The next day, Arthur arrived at the address. It was a large wooden house, located far in the quiet outskirts. He knocked on the door and was greeted by an elderly woman. He asked her about the woman he had met.
Ma'am, does Mary Tailish live here?
But then something unexpected happened. The woman suddenly burst into tears and invited him inside. The house was large and beautifully decorated inside. He noticed pictures of Mary. In every single one, she was wearing the same red coat. The woman began telling him about Mary. She was their daughter. One night, while she was on her way home, a group of men kidnapped her and took her away. The mother had been worried sick. 2 days later, the police found Mary's body. Her eyes and left arm were missing. Arthur was speechless. He had seen her eyes, her hands, her beating heart when she sat in his car. But in reality, Mary Tailish had been dead for years. Trying to remain calm, he handed them her coat, then left. As soon as he got into his car, he saw Mary again. But this time, she wasn't the same. She was no longer human. Her red coat still clung to her shoulders, but now it was tattered and soaked in something dark. Her eyes were hollow, her skin ashen, and she gave him a chilling smile before vanishing. Arthur tried to push it all out of his mind, but for days, he kept seeing Mary in every shadow, every reflection in the window. One night, he woke up in bed and saw her standing in the corner of his room. Her left hand was missing, a dark stain on her chest where something had been taken. She whispered,
Arthur, you helped me.
Her freezing fingers touched his forehead. Suddenly, sharp pain, screams, and the sound of something being cut open filled his mind. He saw dark figures, their shadows stretching over a struggling girl. He felt her terror. Then he saw their faces, their eyes staring directly at him. Then darkness. Arthur woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, and decided to go to the police station. He thought they'd laugh at him, but instead, they pulled out old case files. It was all real, but they had never found the suspects. The news became a major headline. Arthur had, in some way, helped bring justice for Mary Tailish. There was a legend Arthur later found online. Anyone who meets Mary Tailish must help her, or they will meet a terrible fate. Luckily, Arthur had been kind to her. Trucker's secret mission. Another long and quiet night on the highway. The road stretched endlessly before me, illuminated only by the headlights of my truck. I had been driving this road for years, working undercover as a long-haul truck driver. My real job was much more dangerous, tracking criminals, operating on these desolate roads under the cover of darkness. I am an undercover cop. My truck is my weapon, my disguise, and my hideout. Tonight was supposed to be like any other night, but I had a feeling, something gnawing at the back of my mind, telling me that tonight would be different, so I needed to be extra cautious. The road was deserted. The only sounds were my engine and the occasional rustle of wind over the barren landscape. I kept my eyes on the road, scanning the distance for any signs of trouble. Criminals often use these isolated highways to conduct their business, and I've made it my mission to stop them. Suddenly, I spotted a figure standing by the roadside, waving for me to stop. It was late, too late for anyone to be out here. My instincts kicked in immediately. Something was off. I slowed down and stopped by the roadside. The man approached, his face shrouded in darkness. He looked disheveled, almost deranged. As he got closer, I could see his clothes were torn and filthy. His hands twitched nervously at his sides, and there was a wild look in his eyes. I cautiously rolled down my window. "Do you need help?" But there was something about this guy, something dangerous. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he smiled a slow, eerie smile that sent chills down my spine. Then, he pulled something out from under his coat, a small black box. I recognized it immediately. It was a vial containing a dangerous, illegal substance, something that could be lethal on contact. My heart beats fast. This is no ordinary hitchhiker. He is a dangerous man, and his target is me. The man stepped closer, holding the vial in one hand and a small knife in the other. "Get out of the truck," he said, his voice low and threatening, "or I'll make sure you don't make it through the night." I knew what was in that vial. It was a more dangerous weapon than the knife he held. Just one drop could incapacitate me, or worse, kill me. He knew it too. That's why he smiled like that. I kept my cool. My training kicked in. I had dealt with guys like him before, unpredictable and dangerous. But this time was different. He wasn't just a criminal, he was playing a twisted game, and I was his target tonight. I slowly unlocked the door, my mind racing as I tried to think of my next move. The man continued to smile, his eyes gleaming with some sick satisfaction. "Come on," he taunted, waving the knife. "Get out of the truck, Brian." I froze. How did he know my name? I had never met this guy in my life, yet he knew who I was. He stepped closer, holding up the vial. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Driving around here pretending to be a hero, catching guys like me. I've been watching you for a long time." The truth hit me like a punch. This wasn't random. He had planned this, but maybe he didn't know I was really a cop. I climbed out of the truck, raising my hands to show compliance. My mind raced, searching for an opportunity. The man circled around me, still grinning like a madman. He sneered, starting to pace back and forth, waving the knife and vial as he spoke. His words grew more erratic. He muttered something about me stealing it from him, but I couldn't even remember what it was. I racked my brain, trying to recall him. I had taken down countless criminals in my time. Drug dealers, traffickers, murderers. Any of them could have a grudge. But this guy, his face didn't ring any bells. His eyes burned with hatred as he said, "Now I'm going to ruin your life." He stepped closer, waving the vial in front of me. He whispered, "Just one drop, and it'll all be over." I stood still, watching his every move. He was too close, too confident. He thought he had won, but he was careless, distracted by his own need for revenge. Suddenly, luck was on my side. As he rambled, I noticed a flaw in his plan: the way he loosely held the knife. How distracted he was. He was too immersed in his own twisted game. Luckily, every time I went on a mission, I always wore gloves to protect myself from hazardous materials. Without warning, I lunged forward, knocking the vial from his hand, sending it skidding across the pavement. He was shocked, but not for long. He swung the knife at me, but I was ready because I had been through it and knew how to handle it. I grabbed his wrist and twisted until he dropped the blade. The struggle was quick and brutal. I used every trained skill to subdue him, pinning him to the ground before he could react. He thrashed, cursing and screaming, but it was over. I had him. As I held him down, panting from the exertion, I asked, "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" He just laughed a cold, empty laugh. I stared at him, the pieces falling into place. He was one of the first criminals I had ever apprehended, a drug trafficker. He didn't forget I waited, planned, burned my hatred for years. I squeezed him. His words stabbed deeper than any weapon. He didn't pursue money or drugs or even freedom. He pursues revenge aimlessly and empty. Once he was subdued, I discreetly pressed for backup, making sure no one knew my true identity, while I waited for the other officers to arrive. I couldn't shake the chill down my spine. This man, this forgotten criminal, had built his entire life around destroying me. The lights of the patrol cars approached. This job wasn't just about catching criminals. It was about the shadows that follow you, carrying grudges from the past that never truly go away. My colleagues took him away. For every criminal I took down, there would be another waiting, another with a grudge, another seeing me as the one who ruined their lives. But now I understood more. The real danger wasn't out there on the road. It was in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. The Stalker in the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot. It was just an ordinary morning. My usual routine, a quick coffee stop at Dunkin' Donuts before heading to work. I don't go there every day, only when I feel like treating myself. Today, I decided to visit my usual spot. The store was busy, as expected, with the familiar noise of orders and chatter filling the space. I lined up, placed my order, and within minutes, I had my coffee in hand. As I stepped out of Dunkin, the sun was high, and the parking lot was crowded. People were rushing off to work, grabbing breakfast, nothing unusual, except for one thing. There was a man standing near my car. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there, near the passenger seat, wearing a black coat, with his head slightly tilted as if listening to something. I tried not to think too much about it. People do weird things sometimes, right? Maybe he was just waiting for someone. I pressed the unlock button on my remote, the faint beep cutting through the quiet, and I headed for the driver's seat. The plan was simple. Get in, start the car, drive off, and forget about it. As soon as I got inside, an uneasy feeling ran down my spine. I put the key in the ignition, and just as I was about to start the car, the passenger door opened. The man got in. For a second, I just stared, frozen in disbelief. He didn't look at me. He didn't say a word. He just sat there, staring out the window. My heart raced. I didn't understand what was happening. I turned to him, my voice shaky. "I think you're in the wrong car." Silence. He didn't even acknowledge me. The tension was palpable. I said it again, louder this time. "You're in the wrong car." Still nothing. He just stared out the window, his expression blank, detached. That's when the fear set in. I told him to get out or I'd call the police. My voice was firmer now, desperate. And then it happened. Without warning, he turned toward me, glaring. His hand shot toward the ignition, and before I could react, he grabbed my keys. For a moment, he struggled. He held my keys in a tight grip, and before I knew what was happening, he swung at me, using the keys as a weapon. He swung it toward my face. I dodged, but I knew I had to get out of there. I pushed open the driver's door and bolted. I ran, gasping, panicking, not stopping until I was back inside Dunkin' Donuts. I grabbed my phone and called 911, barely able to explain what had just happened. Through the large glass windows of the store, I saw him driving off in my car, disappearing down the street. The next few minutes were a blur. The police arrived, took my statement, and I filled out a report, my mind still reeling from what had just happened. A few hours later, I received news. The police discovered my car by the woods in an empty state, and no one was in it. But something felt off. Even after I got my car back, the image of him sitting silently in the passenger seat, his vacant expression, lingered in my mind. Who was he? Why had he chosen my car? Weeks had passed since that strange man entered my car, and every visit to Dunkin' Donuts filled me with discomfort. Today was no different. I stood in line, ordered my coffee, and tried to convince myself that everything would be fine, that he wouldn't come back. It was early evening when I grabbed my coffee and stepped outside. I scanned the area, my eyes instantly locking onto a familiar figure standing at the edge of the woods. It was him. This time, he didn't have that vacant look. Instead, he stood there, head tilted, grinning eerily and waving at me as if teasing. A chill ran down my spine. My heart raced in my chest as I hesitated, unsure of what to do. Somehow, he didn't chase after me. Instead, he casually opened the passenger door and sat back inside my car with that same blank expression. This time, he didn't drive away. He just sat there, staring at me through the windshield as if waiting for something. I began to call the police. They arrived within minutes. I stepped aside, watching them cautiously approach the vehicle. The man remained still. He sat there, his emotionless eyes fixed ahead, oblivious to the events unfolding around him. One of the officers commanded him to step out of the car. For a moment, it seemed like he ignored their orders. But then, he slowly turned his head, his expression oddly calm. He opened the door and stepped out of the car, raising his hands as if surrendering. A few hours later, I sat in the police station, recounting the incident as if it was the 100th time. My arm still throbbed with old bandages covering the cuts from the key. They told me he had been arrested, and after taking his fingerprints, they discovered he had a long history of mental illness. His records showed he had been in and out of psychiatric facilities for years, diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. His delusions had worsened over time, and it seemed he had fixated on me for reasons no one could explain. They said he saw things, heard voices screaming incoherently when there was nothing around. They believed he couldn't distinguish reality from fantasy. A wave of relief washed over me, but it was mixed with sadness. The man who had terrorized me was not just a criminal, he was sick. His mind had warped reality into something unrecognizable, and I had become part of that nightmare. As I left the police station, I couldn't shake the image of him sitting in my car, staring out the window, detached from the world. He had been arrested, and the officers assured me he would be taken back to a mental facility where he could receive the treatment he desperately needed. But the scars he left, both physical and mental, would take much longer to heal. I stood next to the car, hesitating to open the door, reluctant to sit in the driver's seat where everything had happened. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to unlock the door and get into the driver's seat. I started the engine and drove out of the parking lot, determined to move forward. After all, everything was finally over. Run away from the Stalker. It was one of those summer nights where the air was still, and everything seemed eerily quiet. The large, suburban house, with its perfectly trimmed lawn, stood imposingly. Inside, Chase and I had no idea of the terror about to unfold. I was 15 at the time, hanging out at my friend Chase's house. His parents were out, and we were home alone. The basement was every kid's dream. A TV, a pool table, video games. It was the kind of place that made you forget the world outside, and we were living the dream. We lounged on a big leather couch, watching a horror movie on TV, munching on chips. Chase had started to doze off. I was struggling with my own unease, the kind of anxiety I often felt when sleeping over at a friend's house. But tonight, it felt different. It was much worse. It must have been past midnight when I heard it. A door creaking open slowly. I glanced over the back of the couch and saw something unsettling. The laundry room door in the basement was wide open. I wanted to believe it was a trick of my mind, maybe just the wind, but I knew better. I quickly shook Chase awake. Chase, wake up. The laundry room door. It opened by itself. Chase, groggy and half asleep, mumbled something about it happening all the time and told me to go back to sleep. He didn't seem panicked, but I couldn't shake the strange feeling crawling down my spine. I insisted that we go close it together. We both got up and cautiously shut the door. Chase flopped back onto the couch, falling asleep within minutes. I tried to relax, but sleep didn't come easily. A while later, I woke up again, but this time, it wasn't a sound that startled me. Standing behind the couch, looking down at us, was a man. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. The man was pale, sickly looking, with sunken eyes and an expression that was deeply unsettling. He stood there, motionless, just staring at us. I screamed, a sound that shattered the stillness of the night. Chase jolted awake, his eyes wide with horror as he saw the man advancing toward us. In our panic, we ran. The basement had two exits, one leading upstairs to the front door, the other to a sliding door at the patio. In our terror, we split up. I ran for the patio while Chase bolted up the stairs. Gasping for breath, I quickly called the police, shouting out the address and frantically explaining that someone had broken into the house. But Chase, I couldn't leave him behind. I circled the house, sneaking back in through the same door I had used to escape. My heart pounded as I stepped inside. It was too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl. I knew I had to find Chase. I moved as quietly as I could, climbing the stairs, each step creaking beneath me. The house was massive, and the silence was suffocating. Then I heard it, Chase's voice. His scream, a desperate, terrified scream for help. I bolted up the stairs, my legs trembling. At the top of the stairs, I saw the man, the intruder, wrapping his hands around Chase's neck, choking him, his face twisted in a grotesque expression. Chase's eyes were wide, his face flushed as he struggled to breathe. I grabbed the closest thing I could, a heavy sports trophy from Chase's room. Without thinking, I charged at the man. I swung the trophy with all my strength, smashing it into the back of the intruder's head. The man collapsed to the floor, and Chase fell with him, gasping for air, but alive. We didn't wait. We ran outside, not stopping until we reached Chase's treehouse. There, we hid, waiting for the sound of sirens. Chase was still trembling, rubbing his neck where the man's hands had gripped him just minutes earlier. We sat in silence, too afraid to speak. I looked out through the small window in the treehouse, scanning the yard for any sign of movement. The house looked eerily still, as if nothing had ever happened. Chase whispered, "What do we do now?" I had no answer. All I knew was that I couldn't let him go back inside. Suddenly, a faint rustling came from the direction of the house. I held my breath, straining to listen. At first, it was soft, like footsteps on grass. Then, I saw him, the man. He was slowly walking across the yard, his movements deliberate. His sunken eyes stared straight ahead, almost robotic, as he made his way toward the treehouse. I grabbed Chase's arm, pulling him away from the window. "He's coming." We both backed into the corner of the tiny treehouse, barely breathing. The man's footsteps grew louder. Now I could hear him, crunching on the gravel path leading to the treehouse ladder. The creaking of the ladder made me jump with fear. He was climbing. I could feel the weight of him pressing down on the structure as the treehouse swayed with each step. Chase looked at me, eyes wide with terror. I had to do something. I scanned the cramped space, frantically searching for anything I could use as a weapon. My eyes landed on a rusty toolbox Chase's dad had left there months ago. I grabbed a metal rod nearby, gripping it tightly in my trembling hands. The man's hand appeared at the edge of the treehouse entrance, his fingers curling around the wooden frame. I swung the rod down with all my strength. The man let out a groan of pain, lost his balance, and fell backward off the ladder. He hit the ground hard. I grabbed Chase, and we scrambled down, running as fast as we could toward the house. My mind raced. Where could we go? The man had fallen, but he wasn't dead, and I knew it wouldn't be long before he got up again. Panting, I pulled Chase toward the side of the house, where thick bushes and overgrown trees hid us from view. We crouched down, trying to catch our breath. Suddenly, headlights appeared in the distance, the sound of tires crunching on gravel. It was the police. I whispered to Chase to wave for help. We stood cautiously, peering around the bushes. The man was nowhere to be seen. I signaled to Chase to follow me. We darted toward the driveway as the police car came to a stop. Relief washed over me as two officers stepped out, immediately scanning the area. I shouted, "He's still here!" "He's..." Before I could finish, a man emerged from the shadows, appearing from the side of the house. His movements were slower, more deliberate. Blood dripped from a gash on his head. The officers drew their weapons, ordering him to stop. But he didn't listen. He kept walking toward us, his eyes locked on Chase and me. The man ignored them, continuing his slow, deliberate walk. And then, without warning, he charged at us in a terrifying sprint. A gunshot from the police tore through the night. The man staggered, collapsing to the ground, gasping for breath. A wave of numbness washed over me. It was finally over. That night, as Chase and I sat in the police station, I learned that the man was a drifter, living in abandoned houses across the city. He was mentally unstable, with a history of violent behavior. But the most chilling detail? In his pocket, they found a crumpled old photograph. It was of Chase's house. The man had been watching us for a long time. Chase and I stood outside the police station, waiting for our parents to arrive. The terror of the night still weighed heavily on us. It served as a reminder that real horror doesn't always come from the darkness. Sometimes it's standing right behind you, watching.